Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day 426, May the 10th, 2018, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, I'm going to focus mostly today on the latest from the Last Refuge. Some very interesting things that were pointed out in an article yesterday. Not too many new facts as much as there are facts that we have had, but we're able to put those things in a different context now. 6 months or a year ago, some of this information we didn't know what to do with it, but now we have information with other new information that's come out, and now we're beginning to get a better piece of the what the picture looks like. Even though, if we're putting together a puzzle, we still have a lot of pieces missing, a lot of important pieces missing. But we're getting a pretty good view of what this picture should look like when it's done. But we need to get all the pieces. Now, I agree with the Last Refuge on about 90%. There's maybe about 10% of the time where I'm not 100% in agreement. Not because I vehemently disagree, or not because whoever Last Refuge is, they would probably vehemently disagree with me. It's the fact that there's missing pieces, and so we have to try to fill that in. We have to try to guess. And so my guess may be different than theirs on some things. But 90% of the time, I agree with what I read from the Last Refuge. So I'm going to focus on that for most of the video because there's some very key things that we need to look at. But before I get into that, I just want to point out a couple things from the election and another piece of breaking news. So here yesterday in Ohio, I don't know about Virginia, West Virginia, and Kentucky, but I know what happened here yesterday. Of course, Mike Wine did win for the race for governor, so he'll be facing off against a left-wing Democrat in November for the governor of Ohio. Now, Trump won Ohio by like 13%. Things are looking good. Of course, between now and November, a lot of things could happen. DeWine is he's not a great Trump supporter. He's not a great conservative or anything like that. But I think that we should be able to hold on to the governorship here in Ohio in November and win that race. Jim Ranucci did end up beating this businessman pretty handily by about 30 points. So Ranucci did win that, and that was Trump's, the guy that Trump called out here when he was in Ohio giving a rally. So Ranucci is now going to be battling for that Senate seat. Now this would be a +1 pickup for Trump in the National Congress getting this Senate seat, because it's occupied right now by a Hillary Clinton drone and a far left-wing Democrat. So, and I like where we stand in this race. I think we will take that Senate seat in November, and that's a +1 that that we should pick up that Senate seat. I feel pretty confident about that. That we're gonna gain that Senate seat. So I feel pretty good about coming out today and telling you that we're gonna carry that Senate seat, and which is now a Democrat in that seat. We're going to displace the Democrats by 1 Senate seat, replace it with Mr. Ranucci. That's what I believe is going to happen in November. But it's a long way from now. We'll just have to keep watching. But I feel pretty good about it right now. But the most the coolest thing that came out of yesterday's election here in Ohio is that we learned that there were 200,000 more Republicans who turned out to vote than Democrats. Think about that. 200,000 more Republicans than Democrats voted in our election yesterday here in Ohio. I don't know if that happened in Kentucky, or if that happened in Virginia or West Virginia, or any of the other states that have had these primaries going on, or the ones who will be having them come up in the future. But if that continues, not only is there not going to be a blue wave, but there's actually going to be a red wave. This will be historic, because typically, most of the time, the overwhelming majority of the time, the president's very first midterm, his party loses seats. This is just what it's always been. And it's usually, they tell us it's because of turnout. Because they'll say, well, the party that just won, they got their president, they sit back on their laurels, and they just don't get out in that first midterm. Whereas the party that lost, they're chomping at the bit to get back out there. They're upset that they lost, and they have a much better effort at getting people out to vote. So the vote turnout is typically much higher for the party who's out of power in the president's first midterm. this usually results in the president, the opposing party, picking up seats in the first midterm. But if you look at this and you project this happening all across the country, if Republican turnout is this much higher, we're not talking a little bit, we're talking a massive amount. What this tells us is that there's a lot of Republicans. The Republicans are not going to play into the typical, what we've seen historically, where they're going to sit home in the president's first midterm. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like the Republicans are going to have huge turnouts in November. Even though their party won the White House, they're still going to be turning out in great numbers, historically high numbers and percentages of turnout. And this would be extremely bad for the Democrats. And, this speaks to something else, that I've been talking about now for over a year, which is that, the Democrats have a serious problem, as I've been saying. They are a divided party. They cheated Bernie. And those Bernie supporters are not coming back. Many of them. And I've got friends of mine who are Bernie supporters, progressives, and they tell me they despise Trump, but they despise the Democratic Party 1,000 times more than that. They want to destroy the Democratic Party as it currently stands. They want them to have huge losses until these current Democrats, Pelosi and Schumer and Perez and DWS and all these people, until they're finally gone. They want these people driven out of the Democratic Party. They want a real progressive party, not a corporate neoliberal Democratic Party. And so the thing I get from my progressive friends is that they want to punish their own party. They want to punish their own party, and the way to do that, they know, is by embarrassing them by not showing up and allowing Republicans to win really big in the next election. And hey, they're willing to give up 2020 as well. Whatever it takes to embarrass the hell out of the current Democratic Party leaders and force them out. That's what they want. So I've been saying this for a long time. The Bernie bros were cheated. They know they were cheated. And you can see it's still going on. The Democratic Party hasn't changed their tactics. We just reported yesterday, or day before yesterday, that Bill Clinton got caught telling Perez, hey, do everything you can to keep the Bernie bros out of power. We know that they're doing everything they can to run roughshod over real progressives running in these races. They're throwing tons of money behind their establishment Democrats, and they're doing everything they can to drive out the real progressives. And these progressive Democrats, the true progressive Democrats, really, they see this. They're not stupid. They're paying very close attention. And what is going to happen, I believe, and this is what I predicted over a year ago, is until that leadership of the Democratic Party is changed, meaning Pelosi, Schumer, Tom Perez, and all the rest, and until they get what they believe is a solid progressive, and I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that's what they want to have happen. Until that happens, I think that you are going to see a good chunk, probably 20, 25, maybe higher percent of Democrats who are simply not going to go out and vote in November. They're going to stay home, allow the Republicans to win big, and punish the Democratic Party. And on top of that, you have a lot of highly motivated Trump supporters because we've identified a lot of rhinos who are not defending the president and who are not on the team. And those people are going to be targeted in primaries. But largely, I think the Republicans, the Trump supporters, understand what's going on, and I think that they will be highly motivated to come out in November against a depressed Democrat electorate. And I think that that's going to prove that this year, with like everything else that's associated with Trump, you can throw all conventional wisdom out the window. Whatever you've looked at in the past, from a political science point of view, especially with elections, you can throw it all out with Donald Trump. He's totally changed everything. He's changed the paradigm completely. Nothing that you could ever count on before can you count on now with Trump. He's just totally turned everything upside down. He's created massive chaos in a good way, and he's stirred the pot for sure. So, and I think that the Mueller investigation is also driving a lot of Republicans out to vote as well, because they know that the best way to get rid of Mueller is to get 60 Republicans in the Senate, or to get different people in the House will actually come to the president's defense and force Mueller out one way or another, whether it's through Sessions or Rodenstein or however, whatever you have to do to get rid of this guy. It's bad news, and everyone knows it. So, extraordinary things that are happening, and we'll just have to watch and see as we move forward. Again, elections, it's a long way away. November's a long way. A lot of things can happen, even in 1 hour. It can change the total landscape of the election. So, we'll just keep watching it day by day, and we'll follow it all the way through to Election Day, where hopefully we'll be victorious in a big, big way. I mean 60 votes in the Senate is what I'm talking about. Some people say it's impossible. The most we could do is 56, 57. I'm not so sure. Let's keep watching. Another thing that's been a major change in the past 24 hours is, again, Nunes, I guess, called or had a meeting. I don't know if it was on the phone or I think it was on the phone, and basically told Sessions the same thing he's told him before, along with Rodenstein. Look, we're going to have a vote to hold you in contempt unless we get the stuff that we've been requesting. So apparently they've scheduled a meeting for what will be today, Thursday. So Nunes is going to be having this meeting, I assume, with Sessions and Rodenstein, and I'm sure other people will be there as well. And supposedly Nunes is going to get at least one thing that he wants, maybe two, maybe all three. And the one thing he definitely wants, and what the original letter was about, was this was the FISA, this person, this name of this person. And I think what they're talking about here, best we can tell, the letter's redacted, but the best we can tell is that Devin Nunes wants to know if this same judge, who was the judge in the Flynn case, who then resigned, was the same judge who signed off on the FISA warrant, Contreras. I think Nunes wants to know if Contreras was that judge. I think that's one of the issues that I believe he thinks he's going to get tomorrow. He also wants to know the name of this secret person that supposedly has been, this person is supposedly an American, not a foreigner, is an American. Don't know if it's male or female, but it's an American citizen who has been giving Mueller and the FBI, I guess, secret intelligence throughout his investigation. And they want to know the name of this person. They were fighting that pretty hard. The DOJ was fighting that pretty hard. But Nunes, and this is one of the major things he was fighting over. So it appears in this meeting on Thursday, today, that Devin Nunes may get the name of this person. That's the other thing that he's going for. The third thing is, of course, the scope document that shows the scope when Rodenstein appointed Mueller and gave him the scope of his investigation. This is the exact same document that this judge in Virginia wants. He wants the unredacted scope document, as does Nunes. So the scope document, this individual who's been given super secret information to Mueller and the FBI, Nunes wants to know who that person is, and also he wants to know about this Judge Contreras, if he was one of the people that signed off on a FISA warrant. So that's the three things that Nunes has taken issue with, and he'll be having that meeting today with Sessions, I assume Rodenstein, other people, and we'll see if he gets any of these three, one of the three, or all three, and we'll see what happens there. I expect if he doesn't get pretty much what he wants, that they will go ahead on Friday and have a vote for to hold Sessions in contempt of court. So we will follow this closely and see what comes out of it. Now, I imagine at some point we'll get the scope document redacted. I don't know if we will ever learn who this person is, maybe years down the road or something, but it's not so much important that we learn. I think we should know, but it's most important that Nunes and other people learn. Now, if there's a criminal investigation and all sorts of things go on like that, eventually it may be impossible not to learn who this person was or is. And of course, this Judge Contreras, whether or not he was signed off on the FISA warrant. So we'll see what happens on Friday, whether or not Nunes got the information he wanted, or whether he will go ahead and hold a vote for contempt. We know that Ryan, the only thing Paul Ryan has said is that Sessions needs to turn over the documents. He hasn't stated whether or not he would support going along with contempt of court. But it's hard to say where Ryan will come down on that. He's under pressure on both sides, so we'll just have to see. Of course, he's not running for re-election, so he doesn't care. But let's move on now to the main topic of today's video. Okay, this is kind of an overview of what we have learned recently, and this is based on the most recent article by the Last Refuge, for which I'm about 90% in agreement. So let's go through a couple things here. So, the latest take, we have some new info and some old info to get a better perspective based on information we've received in the last couple of weeks. So, let's begin by looking again at that 99-page FISA court document by Judge Collier. And I'm going to read for you exactly what she wrote in that 99-page FISA court document about the unlawful surveillance and 702 requests. Judge Collier wrote the following, quote, "The FBI gave raw Section 702 acquired information to a private entity that was not a federal agency and whose personnel were not sufficiently supervised by a federal agency for compliance. Minimization procedures. Contractors, plural." Now, let me read that to you again a little faster. The FBI gave raw Section 702 acquired information to a private entity that was not a federal agency for compliance. That was not a federal agency and whose personnel were not sufficiently supervised by a federal agency for compliance minimization procedures. Basically saying that the FBI gave raw 702 data to some kind of third-party contractors who were not legally authorized to get that information, particularly for this minimization stuff that they have to do. So, again, she used the word contractors. Now, we've known for a very long time, or highly suspected, that Confusion GPS was one of those contractors. We thought maybe it was CrowdStrike may have been the other. But we really didn't know who these other contractors, how many there were. We just know there was more than one, and likely one of them for sure was Confusion GPS. But from the Last Refuge, he states the following. Comey has revealed that his friend and lawyer, Daniel Richman, was a Special Access Employee, or SGE, Special Government Employee, working for the FBI. He had security clearance and badge access. He also had access to the FBI and NSA database. The Last Refuge is predicting with a high level of confidence that Richman was one of the contractors in question in the FISA document. So in other words, Comey's friend, Daniel Richman, who he leaked that memo to, Last Refuge believes there's a strong amount of evidence that he, Daniel Richman, was one of those people that this FISA court is referring to as being an unauthorized person or entity that was getting these Section 702 unmaskings and raw intelligence. That's very, very intriguing if that is the truth. And I believe it's very likely that could be the case. But it also, Comey has obviously tried to cover and hide this up. He's never come out and lied about it because he's never been asked about it. But this is something that, through all the hearings he's been through, writing his book, doing all these tours and all this talking he's doing, he's never disclosed. He finally just recently disclosed. Remember, up until just a few weeks ago, Daniel Richman was just his friend. But once there became a legal issue about him leaking classified information, he said, oh, well, my friend, Daniel Richman, he was a special government employee. Oh, I appointed him a special government employee so he could see this. So I passed him classified information, but he was allowed to have classified information because I appointed him as a special access employee to the FBI, and therefore he had access to this intelligence. So I'm not guilty of leaking classified information because he was allowed to see it. But he never told us that his friend, Daniel Richman, was also a special FBI government employee that he appointed. Why he appointed him, I don't know, which is why this makes sense. Because what other reason would there be? Comey didn't appoint him just so he could leak stuff to him. He had some other role, and it looks like that role may have been that he was one of those people who was Judge Collier was referring to that was getting this raw data. So, this ties a solid connection to Richmond to Comey, obviously. This really ties the outside contractors to the small group, because Comey was head of the small group. He created the small group, whose members are FBI and DOJ. Comey absolutely was a major player in the criminal investigation that wasn't, and the cover-up, trying to cover up the discovery of the State Department emails on the laptop of Anthony Weiner as well. He was knew about the counterintelligence operation, the insurance policy or frame-up operation on Trump, which was disguised as a Russian election meddling investigation, and Comey's efforts to continue to this day, along with his friends Rodenstein and Uncle Bob the Executioner. But Comey's friends are fleeing the ship like rats. Some have been fired, some have quit, some have been demoted and are cooperating. And the perps are all inside one small group. And Comey planned, organized, directed, and controlled that operation until he learned that he would be fired. So he stepped aside and let Uncle Bob come in and save the operation. And how can we be sure that Rodenstein brought Uncle Bob in to continue the frame-up operation disguised as a counter-intel operation? And in fact, how can we prove that Mueller came in and essentially assumed control over the small group and their operations? Well, we can be sure of that because of the following document. Looking at the original Department of Justice document, the original release of this document, which was entitled Appointment of the Special Counsel. This document is from May 17, 2017, the day that Rodenstein named Mueller the special counsel, 1 week after Comey was fired. There is a key phrase in this document, and that key phrase is the following. To serve as special counsel to oversee the previously confirmed FBI investigation. To serve as special counsel to oversee the previously confirmed FBI investigation. That was in the appointment of the special counsel letter from May 17, 2017, saying right there that Mueller is to come in and to essentially take over the existing FBI investigation, and that would include inheriting, essentially, all those small group people. Now, the only place where Last Refuge and I would probably have some disagreement, and it's not hardcore disagreement, it's just that we don't, either of us have evidence to prove 100% for sure. I believe that probably Rodenstein and Mueller knew about this small group operation going on already. But the Last Refuge does not either believe that or is not asserting that point at this time. So as I read this to you, keep that in mind. I'm not in 100% agreement with when Mueller and Comey or Mueller and Rodenstein found out about the counterintel operation, which was the frame-up, the insurance policy. Okay, so the key phrase was to serve as special counsel to oversee the previously confirmed FBI investigation. Now, that's how Uncle Bob inherited Strzok, Page, Priestep, and the other small group members. In fact, we know from the recent text that they essentially selected him. Now, Uncle Bob invented Uncle Bob inherited the small group, but Comey created it. Comey created it. Uncle Bob inherited it after Comey was fired, and this statement in the appointment of the special counsel letter proves it. There's no question about it. Uncle Bob didn't come in and start his Russia investigation as something fresh and new. He came in and took over the existing operation, which is the same people that ran the Hillary Clinton email non-investigation, the cover-up of that, then began running this counter-intel operation, which was a frame Trump operation, an insurance policy operation, which they were disguising as a Russian investigation into the elections. This is what Uncle Bob came in and took over. He didn't come in and start something new. So, all these people are connected. And if any one of them come unraveled, they all come apart. Would you like me to prove that Mueller is running a cover-up, not just for himself and the Rotten Reverend Clinton and Rodenstein for their Uranium One involvement, but also he's running a cover-up for the FBI and the DOJ? They are all covering each other because all of them are intertwined. The two things are intertwined. You cannot separate them or the individuals who are all involved. They have no choice at this point. So here's proof that Mueller is running a cover-up for the DOJ and the FBI for Sessions, Rodenstein, and Wray. In late of June 2017, Mueller met with DNI Coates and NSA Mike Rogers. That was in June of 2017. Mueller met with Coates and Rogers. 3 months earlier, Rogers had gone to the FISA court and informed them of the criminal activities that had been going on. And the 99-page FISA court document by Judge Collier had just been released, made public by Coates. So 2 months later, Coates approves the release of the 99-page FISA court document. So Mueller knows. 2 weeks after the conversation between Coates and Rogers and Mueller, where Coates and Rogers most definitely informed Mueller about the illegal access by third parties, maybe even told them the names of the parties who were involved, Fusion GPS and Richmond, we believe, Comey's good buddy, Mueller knew everything at that point about those illegal activities. But he is not investigating it. He is covering it up. That is why Rodenstein, Sessions, and Wray will not act. That is why swamp-dwelling members of the Senate Intel and Judiciary are fighting to protect Mueller. 2 weeks after the Coates-Rogers-Mueller meeting, Rodenstein signs the sketchy FISA warrant, Title I warrant, July 18, 2017. This is the same time that Page and Strzok were texting about the insurance policy. This was 10 months before the IG even began its investigation into the FBI and DOJ. This Title I FISA gave Mueller a full tap on Carter Page and everyone within 2 hops of him. That would include nearly everyone on the Trump team and Trump himself. Michael Caputo recently told Fox News, quote, Mueller has everything on everyone, every person related to the campaign, including emails, calls, texts, the works. From that Title I FISA granted to him by Rodenstein after Mueller had been notified of the illegal FISA activity by Rogers. And they may have told him who the people were. But even if they didn't, it wouldn't take him long to find out. After all, Richmond is Comey's good buddy. And I wouldn't doubt that Mueller probably knows him too. Now, are you ready for this? This is what I call the cover your ass letter. Around July 20th, 2017, IG Horowitz notifies Mueller that there are serious problems with Strzok and Page, and probably McCabe as well. Now, McCabe had just a few weeks earlier lied to Horowitz 2 times about leaking, but Mueller's issues were with Page and Strzok, who were on his investigative team. By August of 2017, Rodenstein and Mueller realized that something was seriously wrong with the small group. Both already knew about the FISA court from their meeting with Rogers and Coates just weeks earlier. It would seem that this is the time that Mueller and Rodenstein learned about the insurance policy. So, how to cover it up? Well, they learned about the insurance policy. They had to cover it up. And the first thing they had to do was fix the problem with the fact that they've been doing all this surveillance. They needed to come up with something to cover their butt on that. So, on August 2nd, 2017, Rodenstein issues a new document, a memorandum with a new special counsel instruction. There is a massive amount of redaction in this letter. But the memo basically expands the scope of the investigation and redefines Mueller's authority. Why? To give an alibi to the criminal perps and the small group and to themselves. Basically, Uncle Bob is running a cover-up operation and a search and destroy operation simultaneously for the deep state. The evidence is clear. In the weeks ahead, when everyone else catches up, there will be calls for Congress to bring in Mueller and Rodenstein and question the investigators. A new special counsel outside the swamp must be brought in. And to make it fair, they should probably all be Republicans and Trump supporters. Just like what we see now, the opposite of what we see now. There are a lot of people with everything on the line here. Mueller, Comey, Lynch, Yates, the small group, the Rotten Reverend, Obama and his cabinet, members of the intel heads, Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, and the unwitting, lying idiot, James Clapper, as well as the Rotten Reverend Clinton. All these people and more are counting on Uncle Bob to come through and deliver. Congress and Trump's attorneys must immediately go on offense and take out the deep state's hired gun. Time is critical. Everything is on the line. The conspiracy is enormous, as we can see, and it better end soon, if it is to end well for President Trump and the country. So, what this shows us is, and again, I have a disagreement with Last Refuge on, he suggests that Mueller and Rodenstein found out about the operations going on because Horowitz came and gave him the Strzok and Page text. I believe they probably were aware of it before that. But regardless of that point, we agree on just about everything else. But we can see from this second letter that Rodenstein, where he expanded Mueller's powers, and what he did was Mueller realized, he sat down with Rodenstein and said, hey, I got briefed by Rogers and Coates, and they told me that a lot of this information that we're using, we got illegally. We have to fix that. So Rodenstein wrote the letter to fix that. And also to provide the ability for it to continue by signing the extension on the FISA warrant. So here we can see, as we've seen all along, that they're constantly having to come along after the fact and try to cover their rear ends for things that they did previously. And this is just another example of that. And we're going to see a lot more of this as this all unfolds. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with some more TowerGate news. You guys have a good night. Bye.